Good morning, everyone. I hope this finds you well and enjoying your day so far on this Thursday before Labor Day weekend. My name is Kristin Anderson, and I'm honored to be your host today for our webinar. We have an exciting webinar planned for you today and world-class content to send your way. I also want to make sure that you know that you are invited to a special upcoming event that is all about a comprehensive district-wide learning framework and using that to really make huge system growth and change. We're excited about this summit, and it is coming up here in October in Denver, and you can see just some of the world-class speakers that we have at this event listed on this slide, and I'll talk more about this and provide more details at the end of the event, or at the end of this webinar today. And also we have several resources from Lead and Learn Press and in our bookstore that support this content here this morning. And you see some of the titles on the screen today, and we can talk more about those also at the end of this webinar so that you are very well aware that the Center is more than poised to support you with conferences, on-site work, publications, anything you need to extend your journey for this learning. So without any further ado, I want to introduce to you Dr. Connie Kamm. And so Dr. Connie Kamm is the president of the Kamm Group and a senior professional development associate with the Leadership and Learning Center. Also joining us today is Dr. John Van Pelt, superintendent of Lake Villa School District 41 in Illinois, and Dr. Bonnie Bell, assistant superintendent of the Claremont Unified School District in California. They are living, active participants in this accountability work that we are talking about today, and so you are going to hear firsthand of what they've been able to do in their district to drive change and transform teaching and learning. So Dr. Kamm, you have been facilitating the development of the Comprehensive Learning Framework for the past 8 years. Can you give a brief overview of what this comprehensive framework includes and just kind of give us this overview and move us on?
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Kristin. Can you hear me all right? All right. First of all, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about why I developed the framework in the first place. And you will see on your first slide on the screen, and Kristin, you might want to forward to that slide. It's titled Rethinking Teaching, Reading, and Learning. And go ahead and bring up all those. Excellent, thank you. What's occurred, which I'm sure you're all very, very well aware of, is we're transforming education right now. And 10, 15 years ago, I was concerned about the need for this transformation. We've gone from a one-room schoolhouse to an industrial model, which was based on the social efficiency movement. And now, because of the changes in technology, the hive mind of the internet, we have to determine how we're going to transform this wonderful industry, this wonderful profession that we're in. So, Kristin, if you could go ahead and make one more forward. So what we know is, and go on to the next slide, what we know is that the skills for the new era are very different than what many of us grew up with. In the past, in this industrial model, we have followed this dictum of equating higher intellectual standards with mastery of more of the same academic content. But now the question is not what do you know, it's rather what can you do with what you know, and how do you update your knowledge continuously. We want students to be self-monitoring, self-motivating, self-modifying, and the same with the adults. So Kristin, if you could forward on, and then to the next slide, to the Common Core slide. What we know now about how we have to transform education has been answered by the Common Core standard and the assessment consortium that are supporting the Common Core standards. We know the Common Core standards are more rigorous. We know that there is a natural learning progression built in K-12. In language arts, you have 5 strands, and the concept is that those strands are to be taught within the same unit of instruction. So as kids are speaking and listening, they're also writing, reading for information. We know that there's a very heavy emphasis on reading for information, writing for information, and writing argumentative essays. Much more of an analytic emphasis, where 70-75% by the time a student reaches high school, the emphasis is on reading for information and not on literature. We also know that in math we have moved to math practice standards, and that math practice standards are also infused into the math content standards. We want students to leave our educational system thinking like mathematicians, understanding math application, and not just formulas and how to work the problem. If you'll forward to the next slide, Kristin. As I was saying, we now know that we have to step up to this challenge, and many of the states have chosen either Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium or PARC. And if you look at the specifications of the questions that will be asked and the balance of assessments, you will see that there is a much greater level of rigor, much more emphasis on interdisciplinary, on synthesizing knowledge, on creating a response. And that's with both of the consortia. So in 2014-15, when these assessments will be ready for all of us, the expectations on our students are going to be much different than they have been in the past. So when I looked at all of this and the changes in education, my concept was that we have to, more than ever, work together as an entire district, an entire system, everybody knowing exactly what's expected and how all our pieces interlink. So to go to the next slide, Kristin, we came up with a comprehensive learning framework. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this framework. It is built by a design team. So when we go into districts, we bring sometimes 40, 50, 60 district stakeholders that include board members, superintendents, community members, parents, teachers, principals, building level administrators, and we work together to custom a framework that is right for your district, but that addresses specific components, and I'll be sharing those components with you in a moment. Once we've designed this framework, and it's captured in words, and generally, and I'll show you in a moment what this looks like, it's captured in words, and it is brought into a one-page diagram. We bring it to the Board of Education. The board not only votes to accept it, but we ask the board to bring it into a policy, and we implement these components district-wide, and I'll talk about those components in a moment. So since you go to the next slide, and go ahead and click on it one more time, you'll see this district-wide framework. As we change the way kids learn and the way they can become directors and leaders of their own learning, the concept is that the framework is the foundation that we always go back to. It's filled with practices and processes. It's not program-based, it's practice-based. It's constantly self-renewing. And as we implement this framework, we are creating formative leaders, which then are supporting teacher excellence and ultimately students and their learning success, students, directors of their own learning. If you'll go to the next slide, Kristin, you will see, first of all, a picture of a finished product. This particular product was done in Saskatchewan, Canada, by Prairie South School Division. And this is one of our most recent completed projects. It takes about 6 to 8 months to complete this project. And you can see that they've done, just from the cover alone, they've done a very impressive job. It's very engaging, very exciting. And Kristin, if you'll make one more forward, move forward one more time, you'll see that they took all of this document and put it into a one-page diagram, and that becomes the diagram that generates action in the district. If you go to the next slide, Kristin, this particular framework is anchored on vision statements, mission statements, strategic goals, objectives, the stuff of your strategic plan, but I call it a strategic plan on steroids. What we want to do is make the words that we put on our websites, on our walls, our vision, our mission, our strategic goals, we want to make them a reality. So we call it the Words into Action campaign. One thing that we all share is this vision for deep student learning and future success of our students for the upcoming decades, very different world than most of us grew up in. So we take that vision, we bring strategic goals to it, and we say, how is it we're going to make this vision a reality? And the reason I chose this slide is because, you know, the emphasis in the Common Core is college and career readiness. What can we do as our students matriculate through our system to make them independent, joyful, successful learners? All right, if you go to the next slide, Kristin. Built into this, you're going to have to keep clicking and just go ahead and bring them all up. Built into this system, this framework, is a rich leadership structure that is based on district leadership teams, school and district department leadership teams, data teams, which are PLCs, teacher-based teams, and then the classroom teacher ultimately is what all of this leadership is set up to support, not dictate down to, but to support, to involve in conversation. So to make our words a reality, we know that everybody has to join in deep conversation, that organizational rich conversation. If you go to the next slide, Kristin, and go ahead and bring them all up. Also, what this framework emphasizes is a rich array of indicators. How do we know if we are all involved in our leadership conversations that are vital, that are rich, and that are leading us to accomplishing our strategic goals? So in the framework, we also publish the indicators that we're going to look at, the state, the district indicators, the big picture, the trend data. We go to our school-wide indicators assessments. What do we use for those assessments? Next, we go to our common formative assessments. How do we bring teachers into vital conversations looking at their generated assessments, a unit of instruction at a time, and ultimately, how do we embrace the formative process in our classrooms? If you go to the next slide, Kristin, and go ahead and just bring it all up. Many of you have probably seen our matrix, and the reason I wanted to emphasize this matrix is because you'll see down on the horizontal axis the emphasis on adult actions, cause data. We're fairly sophisticated now at looking at student results, whether it is benchmark assessments, state assessments, or unit-by-unit common formative assessments. But what we sometimes forget is that we also have to measure the impact of our actions. What we do causes success for students. And you'll see the leading category circled in those quadrants. What that means is in schools and districts that are leading, not only are you getting great results in terms of student learning on that vertical axis, but on the horizontal axis, you have adults implementing with fidelity, and that would be 90 to 100% of the adults implementing strategies with fidelity. That will get you to that leading category, and we write that into the framework. If you go to the next slide, Kristin, the framework is also made up of a series of supporting components. In each of these components, we look at the research deeply and we interconnect them all. So we create processes for improvement plans, which ultimately come to a page improvement plan for schools and for central office departments. Everybody sets improvement plans, and we monitor those monthly. We report on them publicly quarterly, and it's a state of the school, a state of the district report. We bring in the data teams, the PLCs, those teacher-based teams, and the improvement process fits right into the data teams because that's where the improvement strategies are actually put into reality, into action, into units, into instruction in front of students. The next component is evaluation. We have a very rich structure of evaluation. It's very formative. It involves professional growth plans. It ties back to the improvement goals or the problem of practice in schools. And the measurement comes out in terms of student learning and adult behavior, adult action. A rigorous curriculum is also addressed within the framework, and that follows the Common Core standards, and within the Common Core standards, how we bring instruction, instructional units, and assessment. We also included professional development and a commitment that professional development will be deeply embedded in classroom experiences. Communication protocols brings in the entire community in how we not only report, but bring the community into our school-wide and district-wide improvements, and ultimately the support and celebration of schools are not accomplishing what we set out to have them accomplish. then we need to give them supporting structure just as we need to celebrate the accomplishments. And then prior to the question I would like to have you answer, let's go to the next slide, Kristin. These questions are from John Hattie, and he thinks about them as questions in the classroom. Every child should be able to answer, where am I going, how am I doing, and where to next. And in this comprehensive learning framework, every central office department, every school, every teacher-based team can answer these questions as well, and individuals as well. So everyone can answer, where am I going, or where are we going, how are we doing, how am I doing, or where to next. And that is in real time. We can answer those questions in real time once the framework has been implemented. Now what I'd like to do is take a moment to have you respond to a polling question. So Kristin, if you could go to that polling question. Basically, the question is, in your district, do you have a framework of the way you all work together in an aligned system where everybody in your system and every team in your system can answer, where are we going, how are we doing, where to next in real time? Can you respond, please, to that array of choices?
We're already getting a lot of great responses. Thank you so much. We have 35% of you have voted so far.
Okay, Kristin, I can't see the results on my screen, so I'll depend on you to tell us percentage-wise how people voted.
Absolutely. We're at, people are still voting. We're at about 70% right now, so we'll give it another 30 seconds or so. All right. Well, with 30 additional seconds up, we have 75% of you voted. 5% of you strongly agree that you can answer these three questions with confidence. 50% of you agree. 40% disagree, and 5% of you strongly disagree.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for participating. Kristin, if you'll forward to the next slide, I'm going to close my section. For those of you who agreed or strongly disagreed one thing that I have found very helpful is an emphasis on formative leadership. As we're building the framework, it's very much a formative framework where we are all looking at feedback. We're taking that feedback. We're considering what adjustments we need to make. You know, we're getting really good at looking at data. One thing I'm not seeing throughout the country is that commitment to, okay, now what do I do? How do I change my practice as a result of what the data are telling me, what evidence is saying about student learning? So we've coined a phrase or a title of formative leadership. And if you'll take a look at that picture, that is a perfect example of formative leadership. The winds change. Our results change. We need to be ready to work together and be very responsive to how do we keep our boat headed toward our vision balanced so that everybody's going in the same direction. We reach our destination, we reach our vision, and we're responsive to one another. So that is a depiction of formative leadership. And you'll notice, as Kristin mentioned, our conference is coming up titled From Formative Assessment to Formative Leadership, Implementing a District-Wide Framework for Learning. And with that, Kristin, I'm going to turn it back to you. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kamm. You did an incredible job of synthesizing a lot of content and a deep, rich process in a few minutes. And right now we want to hear from our practitioners who have been doing this work. And so our first practitioner that I'd like to introduce you to is Dr. John Van Pelt, who is the superintendent of Lake Villa School District in Illinois. So Dr. Pelt, your district implemented your framework 5 years ago. Can you just tell us about the impact that you have seen on learning for both students and staff?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Could you bring that one slide forward that
Other direction.
There we go. Thank you. We've had the learning framework in place for 5 years now, and as you can see, it's had a significant impact on student learning and achievement over that 5-year period. This chart graph includes reading, math, and science. Writing, the state stopped testing 2 years ago, but you can see the impact on students has been quite significant. And one of the big challenges with any professional learning organization is to develop a framework that is aligned and comprehensive and includes design and implementation and monitoring, support for staff and professional development, and also how do we communicate as we monitor results. The learning framework is both dynamic and it's fluid. And so if you're beginning work or already involved in Common Core standards and you're at that implementation phase or just beginning, the framework is perfect for that. It will provide high levels of support and it will make sense to people. And two of the things that I think have really impacted our district is, first, the role of the central office. Unlike some planning frameworks, the central office is front and center, and they actually go through the same process as all of the other staff and the learning teams. That's a fundamental difference. The other thing the framework will do is it goes back to something Connie mentioned earlier, and that is, what do we do with what we know? Well, the framework will not only help answer what we know, it'll provide an avenue to determine what to do, and that's another fundamental difference. Here's a polling question I would like to have you respond to. Kristin, are you going to do this, or do you want me to?
Go ahead and launch the question, or go ahead and talk through the question, and I'll go ahead and launch the poll for people to respond to.
Okay. I needed to go back to that slide then.
The one that's up, the poll question of our greatest challenge in school improvement efforts district-wide?
That's not, right now, that's not the one that's showing.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
That's okay. No problem. Okay. Here's the question for today's participants. I want you to think about your greatest challenge in aligning school improvement efforts district-wide. And take a look at those 5 choices and pick the one that you consider to be your greatest challenge, please.
All right, well, we are already getting lots of votes pouring in, and some responses were equally weighted, and now we're starting to have a heavy weight more on C, but we have 48% voted, and we'll open it for another 30 seconds or so. All right, I'm going to close the poll in about 5 seconds. All right, thank you to everyone who responded. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So it looks like we have 21% of you responded that A is your greatest challenge, designing processes and structures. 16% responded that determining meaningful goals and indicators is your greatest challenge. And the majority voted on C, which is monitoring, implementation, and reporting results, which is definitely something that when we go from school district to school district is a shared common challenge. And then D at 24%, providing staff support and professional development. And 1% of you did say that communicating with stakeholders is a challenge. So with that said, you can read about Lake Villa's account of how they implemented this comprehensive learning framework and structure within their district in a few different resources. First of all, the book Data Team Success Stories starts to highlight some of their journey as Dr. Van Pelt has written a chapter in that book to highlight the progress. That's available through Lead and Learn and in our bookstore. There is also a white paper on our website for free on Lake Villa School District and their progress. And I have personally had the privilege of watching John and his assistant superintendent present at the ASCD conference a year ago and listening to their account there. They have made radical changes and transformations in their district using this framework and structure. John, is there anything else that you might like to contribute before we move on to our next panelist?
Yes, just briefly. The implementation, monitoring, and reporting, the huge advantage that the framework provides is a consistent way to do that. And the monitoring is aligned with all of your initiatives, and it's done by both central office and throughout the district. There's also a reporting mechanism, as Connie mentioned, where you're reporting out to your public, your Board of Education on a regular basis. That's quite a bit different than doing it annually. And so that's another component of the framework that proves to be very effective.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. Dr. Bell is up next, and she is the Associate Superintendent of the Claremont Unified School District in California. And Dr. Bell, I'm just so grateful that you joined us today. I know in both of the districts that you've been in over the past decade, you have seen radical change and growth, and I know that this framework is very dear to you as well. And so as you've developed a deep understanding of the components of the comprehensive learning framework and you're in the process of taking the framework to your district, how does this framework differ from the work that most districts have already done?
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me as part of this panel. Prior to learning about the comprehensive accountability framework, most of the work that my team and I accomplished at the district level, while good, did not have the connectivity and depth that the comprehensive accountability framework creates, and it certainly did not prepare us well for the implementation of the Common Core state standards. When you take the different areas, and you can see that on this slide here, and what I mean by the different areas, the school improvement process and plans, PLC protocols or data teams, communication protocols, etc., of the comprehensive accountability framework, when they are debated and fleshed out, a true transformation occurs. And I've witnessed this not only in my own district, but also in a nearby district that I've had the good fortune to observe. By synergizing the efforts of all the stakeholders, and that's, as Dr. Kamm mentioned, community, staff, and board members, and developing agreements for how all of the components within a district will operate, you build not only symbiotic relationships, but an innate accountability because of the unique design of the comprehensive accountability system. And I think that's one of the issues that many of us face, as indicated by the polling here, is that monitoring piece is so difficult. But the beauty of this design is that there is no one design. The Leadership and Learning Center staff facilitate conversations within a school district, but the framework truly becomes unique to the culture and needs within each school district. For instance, this framework that you see in front of you is very different from the sample that Dr. Kamm shared with you from the Canadian school district. And you can see that we have what we call an operational plan in the center that starts with district strategic goals. We've identified performance indicators, and that runs into a single plan for student achievement, which is the first red box there. Local educational area annual goals, and then departments also have annual goals. Each of those plans build, each of those departments or school sites build action plans, and then we report out on a regular basis results and outcomes. But supporting that operational plan are these other components on the outside, the data teams protocols, the improvement plans. What are they going to look like? How are we going to conduct evaluation? How are we going to celebrate our successes, and what are we going to do when schools that don't meet the annual goals or departments don't meet the annual goals at the district level, or the district overall is not meeting the goal? What are we going to do to implement support within the framework? As I said, it's unique to the culture and the needs of the school district, and if you'll go to the next slide, Kristin, you can see that Claremont Unified did not do this all in one step. We are just starting the process. Last year was year one for us, and we started by developing the district strategic goals. We developed some protocols to implement the data teams district-wide. We talked in depth about professional development. What was that going to look like? What does the research say with regards to best practices, and how are we going to implement that district-wide? With regards to improvement plans, we started with school improvement plans and redesigned the template with evaluations. Again, we started with teacher evaluations and discussions in negotiations, and the support and communicate piece was in year one. So we did do a lot of structural dialogue with regards to year one. If you go to the next slide, we're in year two of the implementation of these practices. And this year we are designing district improvement plans, management evaluations. We're talking about how we're going to celebrate our good successes. And then next year, as we are readying ourselves for implementation of the Common Core state standards, we're going to be talking about rigorous curriculum design and how is that going to look across the school district. So you can see that all of the components within the comprehensive accountability framework lead to this incredible symbiotic relationship and, as I said, an innate accountability built in. So I'd like to throw out a polling question at this time, and I would like to ask all of the participants, could a similar framework be implemented like this in your district? And if you will answer one of those 4 questions, I'll turn it over to Kristin.
All right, we have 26% of you have voted so far, and the results are pouring in. We'll give it about 20 more seconds. All right, and I'm going to close the poll and share the results with you. So as you can see, about 46% of you voted most definitely, and 34% somewhat likely, with 17 and 3% in the yes, but, or never going to happen categories. So thank you so much for taking the time to participate in our interactive polls this morning. We greatly appreciate it. Bonnie, do you have anything else that you would like to share with the group?
I'd just like to say that using Dr. Kamm's words, the work that surrounds this comprehensive accountability framework is intoxicating. The dialogues and the passion that people express synergizes a district like no other. It is truly a district-wide professional learning community that is created as an outcome of this work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We can hear your passion and enthusiasm for what you've been able to do and the journey you've been able to start in your district. And I like how you really talked about how it's not over, it's not a one and done, it is a journey, and you're continuously learning and growing together. So at this point, what I would like to do is to determine if anyone on the line has any questions. And if you do, we'll take a few minutes to just field some of those questions that you may have for either Dr. Kamm, Dr. Pelt, or Van Pelt, or Dr. Bell. And we'll get those questions, and as I receive them, I'll read them out loud, and we can have some of our panelists answer those questions. Okay, so we have one question from the field, and any of the three of you can take this one. They ask, are there grants or other money to help with full-day kindergarten or other initiatives to help make this happen?
I'll take the question. This is Dr. Kamm. Every district is approaching this very differently. This is why it's a customized product. And there are grants available. It depends on what your initiative is. As a matter of fact, there are grants available to even support the development of the framework and the implementation. So I don't know about a specific grant for a full-day kindergarten, but I will say in all the districts that we have worked with who have actually written, implemented, and sustained a framework, yes, many of them use grant monies to do this. Oftentimes it even comes out of Title I funding, Title II funding. But to give you a specific, I'd have to know specific initiatives. And if, excuse me, and if the initiative you're addressing is a full-day kindergarten, at this point I don't know of a specific grant. Dr. Van Pelt, Dr. Bell, do you?
No, I do not. But as you stated, this is Dr. Bell. Many districts are utilizing a variety of funding to implement this. At our district level, we use Title II funding, some Title I funding. We didn't have any grant funding to implement this, and we used a lot of our own resources within our school district.
Connie, this is John Van.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Sorry. Connie, this is John Van Pelt. Just to add one or two comments. We did not have any grant money, and we don't generally qualify for most of the grants that are available. So we paid for most of it using our own district resources. But one interesting thing about this is one of the outcomes of this process has been that the district is giving serious consideration to going to full-day kindergarten over the next 2 years, where we would have a minimum of one section of full-day in every elementary building, and very possibly full-day throughout the following year. It's just been an outcome and a byproduct of the discussions we've had within the framework.
Thank you so much. We have a comment from the field, and I was wondering if one of you might be able to respond with a solution of how you've been able to overcome this. But they've identified that a potential obstacle is freedoms with curriculum, freedoms within departments are a primary barrier to having such an organized overhaul. Have any of you encountered that type of barrier, and what are some things you've been able to do about that?
I'll go ahead and get started on this. This is Dr. Kamm. Once the framework is put into place and we go through an implementation process so people truly understand it, they will see your barriers drop. I haven't been in one district, and I've been doing this for 8 years, where any of the barriers, including any teacher resistance, has occurred, because the framework is so compelling. Within a rigorous curriculum design, for example, there's a great deal of freedom. We're just giving teachers many, many resources to use as they think about how to bring the Common Core standards into actual student mastery. So it's a rich curriculum. It's a curriculum filled with choices, but we're helping teachers to differentiate and to diagnose student learning needs in real time, in daily, weekly time, and then through data teams, the conversations occur to support the curriculum. So one other thing I'd want to mention is on the design team, one of the things that we always suggest is that you have a rich union representation. And that's if you have an administrative association as well as a teachers union, we want them on the team helping us to design the framework that's going to make their district work well. And by the time they see the alignment that comes out of this process, I don't have resistance. People are so excited. And every district that we have done the framework in has been like the districts discussed by Dr. Van Pelt and Dr. Bell. They've been wildly successful. And success breeds enthusiasm and lessens resistance.
Perfect. Another question I just came across. In my experience, teachers are interested in PLCs. Principals are interested. They want what's best for kids. Oh gosh, where did that go? Sorry about that. They want what's best for kids. How do we get district level staff to want to collaborate and want to care?
This is Dr. Kamm. I'm going to go ahead and take that one as well. Represented in the design team also will be your business services. And we do some special tender loving care with business services, helping them to understand what an improvement plan looks like in maintenance and operation, what it looks like in transportation, in human resources. And actually, as they participate, everybody begins to value the work that is done behind the scenes in school districts to make districts work. So we teach them the protocol. They actually have data teams as well, or PLCs, and they report out and are very much a part of the communication portion. So it is written into the framework, and then when we go from the development of the framework to implementation and then to sustainability, we work with people and help them to understand the power of their own improvement planning, their own data teamwork, and the recognition that comes from sharing out the state of their central office departments, strategies, and indicators. We celebrate them. If people need support, whether they're in transportation or food services, then the support's provided. So it becomes a whole district commitment, recognizing that all of us have our jobs and our responsibility is to support student learning, even if it means keeping the rooms clean so that there's a great learning environment, or making certain that the choices in food are healthy so students are ready to learn in the afternoon as well. So that's really core to the framework.
Perfect. And one final question that I feel like is just kind of captures what you're trying to communicate this morning, and I think all three of you might want to take a crack at it. What is the biggest difference between this approach and traditional strategic planning models?
Kristin, this is John Van Pelt. I can try to help with that. Having been involved in a lot of different planning processes, including strategic planning, the fundamental difference is that in most strategic plans, teaching and learning is simply a component of a much larger structure. In the comprehensive learning framework, it is all about teaching and learning, and it's a matter of emphasis and focus. With the framework, teaching and learning is virtually the core process and planning involved. Other things, as Connie mentioned, are included, but it's a matter of emphasis and focus, and teaching and learning is the main focus. I think that's a really fundamental and important distinction. So that's what we found.
This is Dr. Kamm, and I always tell people that a comprehensive learning framework is a strategic plan on steroids in this sense. It's all about practices and processes. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago, well, how often do you have to redo this? Well, if you implement it carefully and sustain the practices and processes you've written into your framework, you never have to redo it because it's self-sustaining. Unlike a strategic plan, and there are a variety of models of strategic plans, but for the most part, they're goals, objectives, actions set by a group of people, but they're not necessarily that continuous renewing process and practice that we write into a framework. So if you have a strategic plan, we'll take that and put it into practice and process. If you don't have a strategic plan, then the components, including strategic goals, vision statements, mission statements, and some of your objectives, we will embrace and move forward. And then one last thing I wanted to say too, when you create a comprehensive learning framework, we take the best of what you're already doing. We don't redo, if something's working for you, if you have great PLC structure and it's really making a difference in terms of student learning, then we embrace it and write up your current structure. If you have a PLC structure that's really not getting you the results you want, we take a look at it, and then we go to the research and we add the components that need to be added. But it's all about practices. It's not about programs. It's not just about goals. It's how we're going to take those words and turn them into action.
This is Dr. Bell, and I'd just like to add one comment as well, because when I was first introduced to this, I said, oh my goodness, how will human resources and our business services department buy into this systemic reform system? And the beauty of it, as I stated, is the design model in that it is unique to the school district. But by sitting in those collaborative discussions, this synergy is created, philosophical beliefs change, and you create a dynamic, collaborative group that is all focused, as Dr. Van Pelt stated, on teaching and learning. And it's everybody's learning, not just at the school level, but everybody is focusing on getting better at getting better.
Perfect. So thank you so much, all of you, for sharing some of your story with us, sharing this content with us. I have some key questions from audience members that I hope to address throughout the end here. One thing is I wanted to go back to the event that we're having that will kind of take these concepts and theories and flesh them out on an even greater level. That is the event of, implementing this district-wide framework for learning and really embedding that structure and that accountability piece. It's October 24th and 25th in Denver, and it'll feature Dr. Kamm, and you see here as well Kim Marshall in his work in evaluating teachers and as one component of this larger framework. And we really hope that we're able to see all of you in Denver October 24th and 25th. For more information on this, please visit our website under our conferences tab, or you can feel free to call the center at any time and we can get you in the right place to talk with who you need to. The other piece, again, as I mentioned, is we have plenty of publications that support the idea of this comprehensive accountability framework and this real approach for system reform. You see some of the titles here. If you go online to our bookstore, all of these are available for purchase. They address different components of the framework, including the data teams model, including powerful leadership practices like the book Activate, Reflects, and then, of course, John Hattie's research in visible learning being a base and a foundation to support every component and part of this framework for really driving change and allowing success. I know many of you are asking if you can have this PowerPoint because you were not able, or you want to be able to capture some of the steps because you saw some intricate diagrams, many components of this framework and the system, and you want to be able to have the slides so you can really study that and digest it. Those slides will be available on our website within 24 hours, as well as we will put the recording for this webinar with the slides on the website as well. So we encourage you to visit our website after 24 hours, and those will be available for you. In addition, any of the questions that you have asked today that have gone unanswered, we will be providing answers to those questions and be sending those to you as well, because we don't want the learning to stop just because our webinar is near the end of its time. I appreciate your patience today with a few technical glitches, but I hope that you can see the power of the structure and the many, many opportunities it offers for full systemic change. In addition to Connie Kamm being a great resource for this content, you got her email address, which is ccam@leadandlearn.com. I know that if you wanted to communicate or ask more questions to Dr. John Van Pelt or Dr. Bonnie Bell, if you emailed Connie and asked her about that, she would point you in the right direction and make sure that you were able to communicate with both of those great resources as well, because I know that some of our best learning comes from models and people who are doing it in the field that help us all know what pitfalls to look for and know where we should really focus our time and our energies. So with that said, thank you so much for joining us today. You can always rely on the Leadership and Learning Center for free webinars regularly, along with free content and resources on our website, as we're always here to support you in your journey. I hope you have a fantastic day and a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Take care, everyone.